All right, welcome to the Voice of San Diego, Friday 5, live at 5. My name is Scott Lewis. I'm the CEO, editor-in-chief at Voice of San Diego. We've got a lot to talk about this week, all local, mostly local. It's been quite a week, a lot going on. Every week is just a bunch of news, but I think we've got some good local takes. First of all, just wanted to check in on Rocky here. Rocky's he's doing all right. He's hanging with me during the day in the garage here. He's bigger than he was when we first started doing this, this streaming from home. He's a good kid. Always likes to play the ball. All right, let's get into number one. Got a new president, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. I didn't even know his middle name till this week. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. chose a San Diegan to be Deputy Secretary of Education this week. San Diego's own Cindy Marten. She's been leading the San Diego Unified School District since 2013. Well, she was chosen 2013 to lead the district. Had quite a run. Obviously, she was a elementary school teacher. Back in before that, she was at not teacher, since she was a teacher, and then she was the principal at Central Elementary. It was an amazing story. I don't know if you remember this. She was chosen. She was chosen in the middle, of a unannounced private closed session meeting. There had been no search for the superintendent. Bill Koba, the superintendent at the time, says, I'm out, gives them some notice. They meet in private and decide, we're going to hire Cindy Marten, who's, this principal who's always at our meetings, always talking about stuff. She was an incredible source for us. She was always talking and putting into perspective what the district needed to do. She took our reporter at the time, Will Carless, through her school, talked about everything. Suddenly, they named her superintendent. They called her, and they're like, what do you think about the new superintendent? Would you be interested? And she's like, she thought they meant interested in being on the search committee. And they're like, no, we want you to do it. And she's like, wow, that's not really appropriate for you to do that without a search. You can't make these big decisions for the public without consulting with them. And they're like, nah, we'll handle that. You're our superintendent. And she's been superintendent now almost 8 years. It's been a really interesting run. So first, let's get into why they might have made that decision. So Joseph Biden chose Cindy Marten, he said, for this education role, the secretary, the assistant secretary, deputy secretary. And she said, and he said, in the announcement, he cited Unified's graduation rate and reading growth on national standardized tests. Oh, my kids just got home. I have to tell them, hey, you can have screen time if you want. That's all they care about. It's just yes, you can go stare at the screen more after a whole day of staring at the screen. He cited San Diego Unified's graduation rate, reading growth on national standardized tests, saying both exceed those of other large school districts. So we talked about this last year. There's truth in that. San Diego Unified, first of all, is one of the biggest school districts in the country. And so, you're already, by leading that, already part of the discussion of national education leadership. So this isn't that odd. They when they're talking about, what they're talking about is some of these national tests and test averages. So San Diego outperformed other school districts that are similar size in their growth rate for some of these metrics on reading and math. But here's the thing, even though San Diego Unified was outperforming those other areas, just 42% of fourth graders were proficient in math. And that means that 58% of them weren't. So that's just kind of the what we're talking about, the benchmark that we're talking about here, about her outperforming or her district outperforming some of these other places. So, uh, that was what they were citing. The graduation rates was another thing that came up. So, Cindy Marten has spent a lot of time talking about Lincoln High School in particular. This is in southeastern San Diego. Lincoln High School rebuilt 2007. Uh, and we did some work last year, exactly a year ago. Will Huntsberry reviewed the Vision 2020 vision, the plan that the school district had. And that plan was to make sure that every neighborhood had a quality school in it. And so we wanted to check on how that was going. And he did two parts. One, first part was just kind of assessing the vision with some data. The second part was about one area in particular where a lot of people felt like that vision had not been realized at all, and that was in southeastern San Diego and Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School, in particular, has had a revolving door of leadership. I remember 2016, Cindy Marten said to a school board meeting that she sees great things happening in 2016. There's always great students and great educators in all schools. So let's be clear, there are people who stand out and do it. But Lincoln High's data did not come out very well for many years. Uh, Here's the latest from 2017, 2018, their chronic absenteeism. So for the district as a whole, San Diego Unified, that's 15%. Chronic absenteeism is a good measurement of like the safety of a school, the feelings of like whether people feel secure there, whether they're engaged. 29% at Lincoln High School were chronically absent. That's 29%, almost double the district's average. The graduation rate the district cites, 87% for the district at large, 79% at Lincoln High School. Dropout rate almost about 3.5 times what it is across the district. And so I don't think it's any surprise that some of the people most critical of Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.'s decision to promote Cindy Marten to this role in the Department of Education are people from the African American community. So we have Black leaders speaking out over and over again. Uh, the NAACP came out and said they opposed this, cited some of our investigative work, but others about disciplinary issues, about inequity. And then there's the question of the future of the district. So just like they did with Cindy Marten, the school district met in secret and decided on who would replace her for at least this entire year. They chose Lamont Jackson. Now, Lamont Jackson used to represent the area over as an area superintendent over southeastern San Diego. Now he has a different area. He is also former HR resources leader for the district. But there's some folks kind of upset about it. We heard from Lachey Collins Sharp, Lachey Sharp Collins. Let's see. Let's start at here. So we will not tolerate another closed door appointment as it violates the Brown Act. With San Diego Unified School District being one of the largest urban school districts in the state of California, we strongly believe that the Board of Education must take the necessary steps to build trust with the African American community by repairing the damage that has been done to our African American students as well as the overall education systems. Our African American students and educators have suffered enough and demand that we secure a superintendent who is committed to providing equity for all students, supporting quality teachers in every classroom, transparency, and encouraging policy priorities that focus on closing the opportunity gap. So that was from the African American Association of Educators, and they sent that over to me. She has to get confirmed by the Senate. I can't imagine it'll get that difficult for her, but there's some really sticky questions. You should follow along with Voice San Diego. We're going to have lots of coverage about this decision, about reviewing her time at San Diego Unified, and then what comes up later. And if you want to stick around, I'll tell you a couple stories about Cindy Marten and some of our experiences with the district leadership if we get through this in timely manner. But let us go to number 2. Schools are not open. I don't know if you heard, they are still closed. it's not looking good for them getting open. So I reported on in last week's politics report on San Diego Education Association. This is the teachers union, represents teachers from across the district. They have been giving a presentation. They are going to lobby the governor. They hate his plan. By the way, I don't know if you've heard this. Governor Gavin Newsom announced a plan to give up to $800 per student to a district if they can get open by February. It doesn't have to be by February, but as soon as possible, as conditions make it possible to go to school. They're going to give per student a huge boost. San Diego Unified does not like that idea. The Educators Association, San Diego Education Association, the union blasted it, said it's not realistic, not great, don't do it. They want instead to do a circuit breaker. So the way they've described it is they want San Diego and California to go into a total lockdown, kind of like what we had in March, to stop the spread of the disease. And I don't know what they mean because we have a pretty severe lockdown right now. I think it means everything. No takeout, no beaches. I don't know how much more you can close, but that's their idea. And in that presentation, I kind of noted that they didn't talk about vaccinations as a priority, that didn't mention mandating vaccinations, didn't mention getting better distribution points for school district teachers. And so it made me wonder if there was some resistance to talking about vaccination or what. I don't know. But today, or yesterday, Richard Barrera, San Diego Unified Board of Education trustee, was speaking to the legislature about about the governor's plans and about his district's experience so far. And he did address vaccinations. Here is what he said is required to get schools open.
We need to get our educators vaccinated as quickly as possible. That has to happen. And it is entirely appropriate for our educators, given the risks that are in our community, to say, now that we're on the verge of having a vaccine available, we should get that vaccine before we take a risk and go back. So we need that vaccine, and we need it as urgently as possible.
Okay, that's the clearest statement I have heard so far, that vaccination is required to for schools to open, that the teachers need to get vaccinated, and that must happen before schools can open. That's what he said, right? Well, he also addressed the governor's plan. Again, the governor had this plan to give the school districts more money if they're able to open. And it's kind of like a carrot instead of a stick, right? Like, here's some incentive to get open, and you should test teachers. And here was what Barrera had to say about that testing.
Under the governor's plan, if we were to test once a week, that would be about 16 tests between mid-February and the end of the school year. Our arrangement with UC San Diego is for $40 a test, which is the entire testing plus the infrastructure. So that's $640 per student. That's the entire reopening grant right there.
He's a little off on the math there. So it's $40 per test, 16 tests for a teacher from February to the end of the year. That's $640 per teacher, not per student. $640 per teacher and if, let's say, there's 6,400 or so teachers at San Diego Unified, that's $4 million. That's nowhere close to the amount of money that the governor's offering to reopen schools to get them going. So again, what he's saying there is part of the plan to get them open is to have testing available for these educators, and they have to do it once per week at $40 per test, 16 total weeks. So that $640 per teacher, not per student. Remember, the governor's doing up to like $800 per student. Now, there's a lot more students. There's like 100, if they include charter schools, there's like 120,000 kids in San Diego Unified. So you do the math. That's a lot of money that San Diego Unified could be getting in order to make this work. So hopefully we can resolve this and get to a point where we're on track. Personally, it seems more likely just to hope for the fall to open. I'm not giving up. I'd love to see things get better, vaccinations, everything, and maybe we could get open in March or April for a couple months or through the summer. I don't know. But I'm surprised about the lack of discussion among educators about the priority of vaccination. Hope that they get on that, or let me know if you are an educator and you don't want to get vaccinated or something, because that would be really an interesting situation. All right, last point. Barrera sort of drove home why he doesn't like the governor's plan, and instead he thinks the governor should just send them the money that he was going to hold out as an incentive. Just give it to them now so that we can use it for the very few people who are on campus right now and for other counseling and other services. And here's what he concluded with that point.
So our recommendation would be, in addition to the $4.6 billion proposal for intervention for students that we can use now and into the summer, and actually plan for the additional resources that our students are going to need to overcome what they've experienced in the pandemic, take that $4.6 billion of Prop 98 money, add to that the $2 billion that right now is in a frankly unworkable plan that the governor has put into reopening, and allow us to use those resources to meet the needs of our students now, and then to plan for the summer, and then to focus on what our students are going to need going into the following year. And when it is safe to reopen, we will reopen at that point. When we have the vaccines, when there's the funding to do the full testing that public health experts advise us to do, and when the case rates have come down to a point that it will actually be safe, for our students and our staff to reopen. And
so there you have it. Vaccines, testing, and case rates. It's unclear where exactly those have to be, but they can't be here. And so that's where we're at. That's a big bar to get over in order to open schools. What he's saying is, thank you for your offer to give us money if we reopen. How about you just give the money now? And then when we get the vaccines, when we get the testing, and when the case rates are lower, then we'll open. So I don't know. Don't know how soon this is going to happen. Let's go on to number 3. I want to highlight a couple of really interesting stories in the voiceofsandiego.org, voiceofsandiego.org. Check them out. We've got the first one here. Gustavo Solis, who was a writer at the San Diego Union Tribune, dropped in a piece for us as a contributor that Chula Vista's police chief didn't know that the department was sharing license plate data with federal agencies, including immigration. So this was kind of a big issue with we've been talking about that. There's this kind of idea of a sanctuary state, right? And the idea isn't like that you have sanctuary, by the way. That's a horrible word for these things. But because people were getting deported, there's no sanctuary. However, what it meant was that the local law enforcement agencies should not share information or cooperate too much with federal immigration authorities. They need to have the trust here locally, and that's not their job. And the federal government, by the way, per the Constitution, cannot require local states to enforce federal laws. But what we've also discovered continuously for the last 5 years is that a lot of this computer cloud infrastructure is shared between authorities across federal and local and state jurisdictions very easily. Just the databases you can access. So very interesting story from Gustavo Solis. Check it out. I also wanted to share a similar story. It's Jesse Marks wrote a piece this week about the county. We've been having a lot of trouble getting information about where outbreaks are happening, where people who have contracted COVID-19 have been getting it. Well, the county has been giving that specific information about who has the disease and who has tested positive to law enforcement agencies. We heard from the Chicano Federation after that. They were horrified because they've been trying to reassure their constituency that kind of thing wasn't happening, and they were told it wasn't. Chicano Federation let us know that they were quite upset about this information. Always doing the investigative work here at Voice San Diego. Thank you for your support. Check out Jesse Marks and Gustavo Solis' piece this week in Voice San Diego. Very proud of those. So today, San Diego and California got the designation of being the absolute worst at distributing the vaccine. Among other states, Alabama went past us today in proportion per dosage handed to the states. How many of them have gone into arms? That percentage. We're the worst this week. Yay! Number one worst. I want the vaccines out, and we seem like an advanced society. Let's get those things going. All right, the disease is bad. It's been spreading. Bad stories. We talked to people who've been waiting for hours in front of some of these places, waiting to get that. We've heard horror stories about appointments getting canceled. A lot of hard to get the vaccination out. Not disagreeing with that, but we can't be the worst in the region. Let's look at the dashboard as of yesterday. Doses shipped, 442,000. We have almost 440,000 doses here, but we've only been able to get 181,000 of them into arms right now. Only 30,000, less than 30,000 people fully vaccinated. Those numbers need to get better. I don't know how else to say it. Come on. We're going to be following up on that. They did get another dump of doses this week. Now, the governor is taking a lot of this heat. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, blasted him this week for being so slow on getting these vaccines out. And it's yet another escalation of Kevin Faulconer's effort to be seen as the alternative to Gavin Newsom to run for governor. And there's sort of two things to watch out for. One is this recall. You've probably heard about it. It's real. I think there's a real chance that like this summer or so, we're going to have to vote on a recall election for Gavin Newsom. It's not guaranteed. I don't know, put it maybe like 30%, 40% chance that they get enough signatures by the middle of March to put a recall on the ballot. The ballot, if you remember from 2003, would have a question at the top. Do you want to recall Governor Gavin Newsom? Yes or no? And if you do, and forget that, and then who would you want to be governor? And there's going to be a list. It's going to be like 100 people. Kevin Faulconer wants to be one of those 100 people. He supports the recall. But this week, he got slammed by Carl DeMaio, former San Diego City councilman, turned radio guy, turned to congressional candidate, and now he runs, and his longtime PAC, Reform California, has been spending money this week, launched a website against Kevin Faulconer, calling him out for being sympathetic to immigrants, to trying to raise taxes, all kinds of things like that. Now, I've said before, here's just an aside. In 2014 or so, San Diego City Council, of which Kevin Faulconer was a part, remember there was that whole push about immigration going on. The comprehensive immigration bill was working its way through Congress, and San Diego City, the city of San Diego, wanted to weigh in on it. And the city of San Diego, as the city council, decided as a group to endorse a resolution advocating for a path to citizenship for people who were here without papers, that they were here unauthorized. He and the city council unanimously endorsed that. It was not that controversial of a position. It was part of a package of enforcement. But I maintain that given this environment, Kevin Faulconer endorsed Darrell Issa for Congress against Carl DeMaio in that contested East County congressional race, the most conservative district in the state. Darrell Issa ran a big part of his campaign slamming Carl DeMaio for having this much sympathy for people living in this country without documentation. All he said was that maybe police officers shouldn't be involved in enforcing federal immigration laws. And Darrell Issa turned that into millions of dollars of advertising. Remember, he had that horrific mailer with those MS-13 thugs, all the tats and stuff, as though they represented this population of our neighbors. And that's all Carl DeMaio did. Kevin Faulconer endorsed that man and that attack. And now he's going to face that same heat. So I always maintain, he might have a path to run for governor if, Gavin Newsom keeps stumbling. Maybe people have maybe something like that comes up. But one of the things he's going to have to do first is get through the primary. And there's going to be a lot of people hammering him for this kind of thing. And it's going to be really interesting to watch. And that was further more interesting a couple weeks ago when Kevin Faulconer decided to endorse Donald Trump a couple weeks ago. Trying to either handle that situation or what, not sure. A lot going on there. Let's check in on one last thing. Our hospitalizations, we follow that as much as we can. That's a good look. That is a much better look for the community. It was spiking pretty horrifically for a while. Now, look, there's still a ton of people, 437 people in intensive care right now. But, I remember when 230 people or so were in the hospital at all? Now there's double that almost in just the ICUs. But the trend looks better. I hope it continues that way and we've seen the worst from the holidays and we can get to a new order with that. All right. We are on number. Oh, that's right. We're on number 5. Look, this is my thing. I can do whatever I want here. And this week, I'm going to talk about the San Diego Padres. San Diego Padres are wonderful. They are spending so much money, making such great trades. They're going to have the best group of people pitching for them in the league. If you're not into baseball, this is the year to jump on the bandwagon. They're doing it. They are going for it. They keep getting the best pitchers. They keep signing people. I just want you to just keep an eye on this. I'm not going to do a big roundup of reporting. Just keep an eye on it. It's going to be great. Great year for the San Diego Padres. Stay tuned. Do you have any questions? Do you want to rap about it? I'm into it. Let's look at your comments over the previous 5 things. All right. I'm an educator. What do you mean about priority for vaccines? We're behind healthcare workers. So that was Richard Barrera's thing. Yeah. So he said, we got to have the vaccine. He said, so the educators are in that tier right behind healthcare workers. My point is why aren't they using as much political power that they have as possible to get into the next batch? Get as many people up to the top of the line as possible. They announced yesterday or the day before the first teacher in San Diego County got inoculated in Alpine. I mean, just one. Let's get going. I'm an educator in Santee. We want to get our vaccines. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's go. Los Angeles announced that they want to have vaccine distribution centers out of schools. Make it easy. Let's go. There shouldn't be an incentive at all. Why are we trying to incentivize unhealthy choices? Well, I think the point would be to try to make them healthy. But yes, Rosemary says, I think in in the governor's playbook, schools can't open until community cases are below 28. Yes, that is true. We're at like 70. It's not close right now. All right, let's see. Other ones. Oh, this is vaccine. Yeah, not great. We have a no on Cindy Marten campaign. Interesting. Please share more. Yeah, we just got San Diego's own Joe Musgrove from the Pittsburgh Pirates for the Padres. I don't know why they're spending so much money, or why they feel like they have. I think there's a really interesting thing in the market right now with Major League Baseball, where there's a lot of other teams because of the labor negotiations and other things going on. They're like hoarding cash, like the Cubs are getting rid of people, and I think the Padres are just like that's like a market error or whatever, and like they can just pounce on it. So they're getting all these players without having to spend a lot in prospects or without having to trade a lot of talent, and they can sign anybody they want because nobody's competing for them. And there's like, well, fine, it will be the best if you want us to. I guess that's fine. Yeah, this is great. All right, well, I think I'll stick with that. I got to do some politics reports and stuff. Enjoy your weekend. It's gonna be snowing. If you go up to the mountains, leave early, get tire chains. Don't try to go at like noon. Not a good idea. Not a good idea to get in the mountains when it's snowing at noon. That's a bad time. All right. Have a good weekend. Love you all. Thanks for supporting voiceofsandiego.org. Check out all of our stories there and the good work of our team. Have a nice weekend.